So then, the Modern Warfare Crossplay beta is now live, and if you pre-ordered the game or you got an early access code, it's live for you right now, and I think later today, I'm making this video on the Friday, so later today, it becomes open for everybody to play. And in this video, I wanted to give you my impressions of what it's been like playing on PC so far. I'm mainly a PC player, I'm mainly a Battlefield player, so I thought it'd be interesting yet again to give you my opinions on what this game's like, but rather than playing on the consoles, last week I spent the entire PS4 exclusive beta playing with a mouse and keyboard, and I gave you my thoughts there, so I thought now's a good time to give you my initial impressions of what this game is like to play on PC, being a mainly PC Battlefield player. Diving right into things, I think the general performance on PC is pretty good. The game runs smoothly on my setup. I'm running an i7-8700K, 64GB of RAM, and an RTX 2080 Ti graphics card. And after fiddling in the graphics settings, I was able to overcome some of this blurring that's been turned on by default. Most games do this. They turn on lots of settings that make the game look really pretty, but ultimately they hurt your performance. So I've disabled film grain, I've disabled motion blur for both the world and the weapons, and I upped the resolution scale to 100%, so for me that's 1440p, but for some odd reason, by default, resolution scale was set to 50%, so 50% of your true monitor's resolution, and that of course is going to make everything ridiculously blurry. Maybe it's just a mistake in the settings for this beta or something, but having it set by default at lower than 100% just seems like a really strange decision. I did notice that when you scope in using the higher powered scopes that there's some hitching in the frame rate when the game has to render both what's inside the scope and outside the scope. I think they're two different images and they have to be rendered separately, so that takes a bit more horsepower from your system. It creates a bit of a weird feeling in general when you first start playing, but after a while you sort of get used to it because, at least for me, it didn't really go away. I think it's something that developers might need to take a look at. I've spoken to a few friends, all playing with different PC hardware setups, and they are seeing the same issue as well. When they scope in, it gets a little bit jittery. You won't really be able to see that in this video because this video is locked to 60 FPS, and as you can see from the top left-hand corner, the game was running at a fair bit higher than that on my system, but it did make the experience feel a little bit worse overall than what I played on the consoles when I was scoping in. So there you go, console players, a part of the experience that, at the moment, is better on your platform. And speaking of the consoles, of course, we have Crossplay active here. We've got PC, Xbox One, and PS4 players all joining the same lobbies, and they're all fighting with and against each other. For me, this feels like a properly groundbreaking moment for gaming, really. I know that some games have already done this. Fortnite's probably the biggest example. They've got multiple different platforms that you can play with and against different players, but when you see a company like Activision pushing for it, a company that sat in the mainstream of gaming for such a long time but has never done crossplay before, that's a really big move. This is at the same time as Activision having some exclusivity contract with Sony for the PlayStation platform for Call of Duty, so the fact that crossplay is happening even though there's some kind of contract in place, that sends out a really big signal into the gaming world, and I really wouldn't be surprised if we start to see more and more games do this in the future, taking crossplay and implementing it. I've seen lots of people saying that they're enjoying getting into parties with their friends on other platforms and then playing together. They haven't really been able to do that with many other games, and that's exactly the point of crossplay. It's starting to break down those faction-like tendencies where some people think one platform is superior to the other, and you create these teams. It's like Team PlayStation and Team Xbox and Team PC. In Modern Warfare, that doesn't really matter because everybody gets to play together. Now, I want to steer the conversation back towards PC for a little bit. I want to touch on gunplay and positioning because, well, things are a little bit different this weekend. With PC now coming into the equation, you do have a bunch of players. Well, they're reacting a little bit faster than they did last weekend when they were playing with input lag and latency on the mouse when it was plugged into a console. I know a lot of PC players played the Modern Warfare beta last weekend on PS4, so in general, reaction times of the players you're shooting at have increased, or, well, actually, no, they've decreased. It's taking less time for people to react. And in general, the overall speed of gameplay has increased, so it's faster paced now. This is something that I commented on for the beta last weekend. I felt the entire pace of Modern Warfare was a bit slower than previous games in the franchise, and I did see lots of comments from Call of Duty fans saying that, well, they didn't really like this new meta very much. Now, that meta of camping a little bit, the defensive meta in the game, it is still there in some regard, but it's not as pronounced as it was last weekend, and I think that's a good thing for almost everyone playing this game. When you play a Call of Duty game, you expect things to be chaotic, you expect things to be fast, you're kind of firing and forgetting, that sort of thing. Well, that's sort of what's happening now here. For me, I do prefer a generally slower pace to my shooter games, coming from a Battlefield background, but this isn't Battlefield, and I don't want it to be Battlefield, to be honest. I want Modern Warfare to be a little bit different, to give me a reason to play the game alongside Battlefield, to make it a choice. And right now, I do have that choice, and that's great for me. I'm going to have to adapt a little bit to the insanely fast TTK once again, with the introduction of lightning fast reaction time players on PC, but that's the part of playing games. That's just part of it. You have to learn them, you have to adapt with them, and you have to try and practice and get better over time. I do like a little bit of a challenge, so if it takes me a little bit longer to adapt here, then that's really okay in my book. But I mentioned positioning as well. I think positioning is actually more important than the skill you have with the weapons in your hands in Modern Warfare. Because the TTK is so ridiculously fast, you need to be aware of the cover around you, the spaces that you're about to step into, and you have to pay attention to what your teammates are doing to get an idea of where enemies might end up being. At close range, SMGs, shotguns, they're going to destroy you, as they should do. That's what those weapons are designed for in real life, but it's within just a few bullets and you're going to die, so it's very important that you learn the maps, the routes that you can take, and where the best cover spots are, and you can take advantage of those as much as you can. I said this in my video last weekend, it might be tempting to just hit that super sprint button and fly out across the road and get into cover the other side, but the chances are you're going to be seen, you're going to be shot, and you're probably going to end up dying, so play a little bit smarter and use the cover around you before you make too many moves. Positioning is really important in Modern Warfare. Now, of course, it wouldn't be a Westie video if I didn't complain about something. I'm not actually complaining, I'm just going to give some feedback. There are still a few issues that I'd like to mention from my time spent playing on PC. I mentioned that one earlier about the scope rendering, it being a bit jittery. That's one of my pieces of feedback, but the game isn't perfect, of course, and that's why betas exist, for us to give feedback. So here's some more stuff that I've got so far. The aim punching in Modern Warfare is particularly egregious. Sometimes you can be in a gunfight and you take a hit and your aim goes off at a wild angle, completely taking you away from what you're supposed to be shooting at. Aim punch is a thing in most shooter games for sure, but it's usually balanced in a way that a competent player can deal with it and then get themselves back on target relatively quickly. It's part of the gunfight system and it's basically a reward for the player who hit you. They hit your target and they knock your aim off target, so you can't return fire as quickly. Here in Modern Warfare, if you take a hit at close range and you're aimed down your sights, it's very likely that you're going to die because the aim punch is so severe, there's very little you can do to react and then recover from that scenario. Personally, I'd like to see it toned down just a little bit, especially considering how fast the TTK in this game and how little time you already have to react overall, but this might be by design, I'm not 100% sure. I do know that the M14 suffers particularly badly from this issue, and it's been confirmed by a developer over on Reddit that that's a bug. But I'm not sure if that's a bug only attached to the M14 or it's for all weapons in the game, so we're going to have to wait and see. There are still some visibility issues like looking into buildings through windows or doors and it being super dark inside and you can't really see. That's still an issue in this beta. It was unlikely it was going to get fixed in the short time the game was down during the week, so I didn't really expect it, but It's now something that players are aware of and actually taking advantage of at the moment. It makes it difficult to see enemies who might be camping in a corner directly opposite a door. You come through and then you just get insta-killed because you didn't know that player was there. So I really hope to see these visibility issues fixed once the game launches. And then footsteps, they're still audible, but I think it's difficult to tell if it's an enemy or a friendly that you're hearing. This is feedback that I had last week. I thought it might have changed because it might have been something very easy to fix, but apparently not. So what I'm suggesting here, a lower pitch of footstep sounds for friendlies and a slightly higher pitch for enemies. That might stop some of the confusion. They don't need to be different sounds, just having different pitches will give you that little bit of information to know whether it's a friendly or whether it's an enemy. But I do have to say that having the always-on minimap does somewhat lessen the need for you to listen to footsteps. UAVs are going off all the time, and you have the compass at the top of the screen as well, so I guess it's not a major issue anymore. Overall then, with my experience on PC now under my belt, I am still enjoying Modern Warfare, or at least a portion of the game that we're getting to play in this beta phase. I really like that crossplay is a thing. Crosssave is a thing as well. That's really, really cool. I joined the PC version last night and all of my weapon setups and loadouts were there from the PS4 beta last weekend, which I totally didn't expect, but I really, really appreciated. That's a really nice touch. And I'm learning how to play this game more and more the more time that I spend playing it, which is of course the entire point of playing a game anyway. You start as a novice, you get into your stride a little bit, and then you start to master things by sinking more time in and understanding the systems in play. I'd still say I'm very much a novice at Modern Warfare, and I know for a fact that when this game launches properly next month, some of this learned info is going to change because so much more content is going to be available. And speaking of that other content, I'm still waiting for that 32v32 mode, Ground War. Apparently, supposedly, that's going to become active this weekend in the beta, which I'm really excited to try out. I just want to see how different it feels compared to the 6v6 and the 10v10 modes that we've been playing for the last week or so. But yeah, those are the thoughts, the opinions of a PC Battlefield player playing Modern Warfare on PC. At the moment, I quite like it. Thanks very much for watching, guys, and until next time, my name is Westie, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.